There were 30 of us on that patrol, and we were all still alive because of a soldier most of us had never even met. A woman sitting in a darkened room a long way away, watching over us through a camera in the sky, the one the infantry liked to call the video game kid. I was a squad leader, and like most ground pounders, I had a low opinion of the drone crews. They sat in air-conditioned trailers far from the dust and the danger, staring at screens, flying their cameras around while we did the real work in the heat. We called them the video game kids, and we did not mean it kindly, and there was one operator in particular our company worked with often, a young woman with a quiet voice on the radio, who got the worst of our contempt. She'd never smelled cordite, the men said. She didn't know what it was to be shot at. She was playing a video game while we bled. I am ashamed of all of it now. What none of us understood, what I did not understand until the day it saved my life, was what she was actually doing up there in the dark, staring at that screen for hours on end. It was not playing, she was watching. She had spent more time looking at that stretch of ground than any of us would in a lifetime, and she had learned to read it the way a tracker reads a forest, to see the small wrong things that meant everything. The pattern of life that suddenly changed, the village that emptied of children, the men who moved with too much purpose, the disturbed earth at the edge of a road. She knew that ground better than the people who lived on it, and she watched over us with a patience and an attention that we mistook from the dusty distance of our contempt for a game. The day it mattered, my platoon pushed out on a long patrol through an area that had been quiet, too quiet as it turned out. 30 of us strung out and moving toward a cluster of compounds, and high above us, unseen and unheard, her camera watched. We did not know she was there. We rarely did. We were tired and hot and not as alert as we should have been, and we were walking, though we had no idea of it, straight into a trap that had been laid with care. Her voice came up on our net, calm and level, and what she said stopped my blood. She had seen it forming. From 10,000 feet, through her camera, she had watched the pattern of that ground change in the ways only she could read, had seen the men moving into firing positions along our route, had seen the village ahead go still and wrong, had seen the shape of the ambush being set in the minutes before we walked into it. And she did not panic, and she did not flood the net. In a clear, steady voice she told our lieutenant exactly what she saw and exactly where it was. Positions here, here and here, a blocking force moving to cut the route behind us, the whole killing ground laid out ahead of us like a diagram. Because to her, looking down, that is exactly what it was. We stopped, and then she did the thing that saved us. She did not just warn us, she walked us out. She read the ground for us in real time, found us a route that stayed out of the kill zone, and talked us along it foot by foot, her calm voice guiding 30 men around a trap none of us could see from where we stood. Hold there, there's a position 50 meters to your north. Move now, the ground to your east is clear. Stop, don't cross that open stretch, they have it covered. Go left through the wadi instead. She could see all of it, and we could see none of it. And she threaded us through that ambush so completely that most of the enemy never even knew we'd been there, never got to spring the trap they'd spent so long setting, because the video game kid had seen it coming and quietly steered us around it. There was one moment in that walkout that I will never shake. We came to an open field, and every instinct I had said cross it fast. Open ground feels like exposure, and the urge is to get across and into cover. I keyed up to tell my squad to move, and her voice cut in flat and certain negative. Do not cross. There's a team in the tree line on the far side waiting for exactly that. Turn south, follow the irrigation ditch, stay low. I will be honest, part of me wanted to argue, because the ditch was the long way and the field was right there. But I had already learned, in the last 20 minutes, that she could see what I could not, so I trusted her, and we went south along the ditch. We found out later there had indeed been a team in that tree line, waiting for a patrol to do the obvious thing and walk into the open. We did not give them the chance, because a woman 10,000 feet up had seen them sitting there and refused to let us take the bait. 30 of us walked home that day. Not one shot fired at us, not one casualty, because a soldier in a darkened room 1,000 miles away had watched over us with an attention we had mocked and seen the death we were walking toward and led us around it with nothing but her eyes and her voice. I did not meet her for a long time, but I made it my business to learn about her after that, and what I learned shamed me. That she was no kid playing a game, but one of the most experienced sensor operators in the theatre, that she had logged more hours watching over patrols than anyone in our company had spent on the ground, that she had a record of catching exactly these things, of saving units that never even knew how close they'd come, because the whole point of her work was that the bad day never happened. She had absorbed our contempt without complaint because she did not do the work for our respect. She did it so that men like me would walk home to families who would never know her name. When I finally got the chance, years later, to speak to her, I told her I'd been one of the 30 on that patrol, and that I'd been one of the men who'd called her crew the video game kids, and that I was sorry, and that I owed her my life. She was gracious about it, the way I'd learned she was about everything. She said most of the men she saved never knew it, and that she'd made her peace with that a long time ago, because the work was the point, not the credit. And then she said something I have never forgotten. She said the hardest part of her job was not the watching, but caring as much about 30 strangers she'd never met as she would about her own family. Staying that alert, that invested, hour after hour, for people who would never thank her. If I ever stop caring that much, she said, someone dies who didn't have to. So I don't stop. I have thought about that more than almost anything else from my years in uniform. We had pictured her as detached, removed, playing at war from a safe distance. The truth was the opposite. She cared so much and so constantly that she carried the lives of strangers like they were her own, and it was exactly that care, not detachment, that let her see the ambush forming and walk 30 of us around it. I tell that story to every young soldier who starts in with the old contempt for the people who aren't in the dust beside them. I tell them about the patrol that should have been a slaughter, and the video game kid who saw it from 10,000 feet and brought all 30 of us home. And I tell them the thing she taught me, that the person watching over you may be nowhere you can see, doing work you don't understand and have decided to look down on, and that she may care about your life more fiercely from 1,000 miles away than you ever guessed. 30 of us owe her everything. The least I can do is make sure people know her watch was the realest thing on that battlefield.